Hi, Mike O'Neill, video number 5. Now, in this video today, we're going to talk about different kinds of investment types, okay, where you should invest. Um, we're going to start talking about your 401k, a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, a 403b, health savings account, an HSA, right? Your stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and real estate. Okay, so long video. We're going to talk about all of those. Now, as you start your investment journey, one of the things you want to think about is let's don't just use one, right? Just don't use one because what we want to do is we want to diversify our portfolio. We want to create a type of diversification, and that means basically using multiple of these, not just one type. Okay. Um, again, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, the other thing that you want to think about is I want you to become comfortable with what you decide to put your money into. You know, if you invest in something and you don't understand it well, it's probably not going to end up well. Okay, so you need to do something that you understand and invest in those things that you get. Okay, all right. Now, if your company has a 401k plan, that might be a good place to start. If your company doesn't have a 401k plan, maybe you want to start thinking about an index mutual fund, and we'll talk about all those here in more detail here in just a second. Okay, all right. Let's start off with a 401k plan. What is this? Right, it's a retirement plan. It is provided by your employer, okay, where you can contribute money pre-tax, so before it gets taxed. Okay, you can put your paycheck into the 401k account. Okay, the investments in the account grow tax deferred, so you're not paying taxes on them as they grow. All right, and it is not taxed until you take them out. Now, you don't want to take them out until after you're 59 and a half. Yeah, because if you take them out before you're 59 and a half, what'll happen is that you'll get hit with a penalty. Uncle Sam really is using this 401k plan as a retirement vehicle. Okay. Now, when they are taken out, it's going to be taxed at 100% of ordinary income. In other words, it's going to be taxed just like your paycheck would be today. Okay. If you're in the 20% tax bracket, then the money you pull out of that 401k is going to be taxed at 20%. Okay. So it's just like ordinary income. All right. Now, again, if you take out money before you're 59 and a half, the government's going to hit you with a 10% additional 10% penalty. All right. So it really is a retirement plan. All right. Now, here's the neat thing about a 401k plan and why they're so popular is a lot of your employers, they quit paying pensions, right? So and the pensions was a great deal, except what happens if the company folded and they couldn't pay the pensions anymore. So this is more independent of the company. But what happens is that they put money in. Oftentimes, what they'll do is they'll put money in, match money that you put in. Okay, so let's say that what you've done is you've decided that you're going to put in. Your company has a 6% match. So if you decide to put 6% of your pre-retirement income into your 401k, your company may match 6%. Wow. So they're going to match that dollar for dollar that you put in, and that's yours. Now, remember the rule, right? When somebody offers you free money, take it. So this is what we're doing is they're offering you free money. Now, what's happening is that money's going into this investment program and it's going to grow over time. And you've agreed you're not going to touch that till you're 59 and a half. So if your company has a 401k plan and they have a match, try to put as much money as you can to meet the maximum match. Now, what if they only match 3%? Then put in 3%. Okay. Now, what happens is that you may or may not have a say in how the money is invested. Kind of depends on the company, right? And when you leave the company, you can take that money and put it into a traditional IRA. This is not a taxable event, so it doesn't cost you anything. But once you put it into a traditional IRA, it's called a rollover, an IRA rollover. Once you roll that over into a traditional IRA after you've left the company, right? Then what happens? That's a non-taxable event, and now you do have control over how that money is invested. Okay, so yeah, invest in a 401k plan. It's a good deal. All right, now there is also something that you probably hear called traditional IRA. Now, IRA is an individual retirement account. It's an account where individuals are going to add money to the account again pre-tax. Now, there's restrictions as to how much money you can put into this. All right, but again, just like the 401k, as that account increases through the beauty of compounding interest or the market or whatever, as that increases, and you're not going to be paying taxes on that increase. You don't pay taxes until you pull the money out. And again, you don't want to pull the money out until you're 59 and a half. Okay, so um, a lot of times what will happen is people will again take put money into the 401k for years and years and years, however long you're working with the company, and then once you leave that company, right, then you roll that over into a traditional IRA, and that's kind of how that's done. And usually that's done with a financial advisor. Okay, you pick an advisor, they're going to roll that money from the 401k into your traditional IRA. They're going to be happy to do this because they're going to uh, manage the IRA under their supervision, and there should be no cost to that. So that's the first two things we need to think about is that your 401k and your traditional IRA. Now, there's also something called a Roth IRA. Okay, a Roth IRA again is an individual retirement account, so it's all set up for retirement. But there are some differences, and those differences are in the way that it is taxed. Now, the 401k and the traditional IRA, money comes out of there pre-tax. In other words, in the year that it comes out, that's not being charged as an ordinary income. So it can actually decrease your tax bill that year. But when it comes out at 100% taxable. Now, the Roth IRA, just the opposite. You are taxed on that money as it comes in. But instead of putting that money in your pocket, you're going to turn around and put that into a Roth IRA. Now, a Roth IRA, again, if you put this into the market or whatever, it's going to increase over time. You are not being taxed on the increase. And here's the beautiful thing about it, right? When you pull that money out, it's not taxed, not the money you put in and not the increase, right? So, what a sweet deal on the back end. Okay. So, if you put in $10,000, for instance, over the next 2 or 3 years into a Roth IRA, right? And it sits there and grows and grows and grows. You turn 59 and a half and you look at it and you have $50,000 in that account. That $50,000 can be taken out tax free, right? Wow, what a neat deal. Now there's restrictions on how much money you can put into it. Yeah, yeah, restrictions. So you kind of need to think about some of those restrictions, and it changes year to year. So one of the things you need to do is you need to think about how we can do that. Again, talk with a tax advisor about that. Okay, now how this works with your traditional IRA or your 401k is you put money in, right? In a let's say a 401k, you leave that company and then you roll it into a traditional IRA. Cool. All right, you roll it into a traditional IRA. Once you get past 59 and a half, you can pull that money out, pay taxes on it as ordinary income, and move it into, again, roll it over into a Roth IRA if you don't need that money for a particular period of time, for, typically more than 5 years. All right. And what that happens is that now all of that money, when you pull it out later, will be tax free. So once you get into a retirement in a distribution type situation, tax becomes very, very, very important. So it's one of the things we need to think about, which is one of the things that's frustrating because so many books that on are written on accumulation or they're written on distribution. But very few books are written with both in mind. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote this book is because we talk about both of those. Okay, so three kinds of IRAs. You have your 401k, you have your traditional IRA, and you have your Roth IRA. All right, now we also have something called a 403b. What is that? Okay, a 403b is a retirement plan, much like a 401k. The difference is it is available to employees of public schools, churches, and some 501c nonprofit organizations. Okay, not people that normally cannot contribute to a 401k can contribute to a 403b. Okay, it also has restrictions on how much you can add into this account every year. So, again, talk to your tax professional. Now, another thing that you might want to think about is an HSA. An HSA is a health savings account. This is an account created uh, for or by individuals to save for medical expenses. Now, the cool thing about this is contributions may be made by this account by the sponsoring company, or, and depending on the situation, by the individual. So I know that my wife was working at a company, they put money every year into an HSA for her. She didn't put the money in, but they put, I don't know, several $1,000s every year into it. Now, the benefits here is that this account is going to grow with the market, right? It's not taxed as income as long as the money is used for medical expenses. So when my wife, I told you she broke her leg here a couple of years ago, we used that money from her HSA account to pay for that medical expense. Okay. Now the money, if the money's taken out before it turns 65 and it's not used for medical expenses, it's a subject to a 20% penalty. So don't do that. All right. All right. Um, if the account holder is over 65, the money can be taken out and used for non-medical expenses and is not subject to the 20% penalty. If it's not used for medical expenses, it will, however, be taxed as ordinary income. So again, an HSA is another type of vehicle that can be very advantageous. It's used for medical expenses. It doesn't have to be, but it certainly works out well for that. All right. So another thing that we need to think about when we're talking about types of investments is stocks. Stocks. Now, what is a stock? Well, basically, what a stock is that you're buying a company. Now, you're buying a little bitty piece of the company, but you're actually buying the company. You're not buying the entire company, but you're buying it. So, for instance, I own IBM. I own a little bitty piece of IBM. I also own the Green Bay Packers, which is very cool. I think it's a great way for, it's the only sports franchise that is actually owned by the public. So I own 2 shares. Wow, 2 shares. Yeah, just because I think it was a great way to run a franchise. Yeah. So basically, you're buying a little bitty part of the company. Now, how do you get paid? Well, you get paid a couple of different ways. The value of the company may increase, and therefore your size of that pie gets bigger, right? So when you turn around and sell it, right, then you get more for it, right, because the company has become more valuable. So you get money when the value of that asset, that little bitty piece of the company, grows. Now, another way that you may get money is they may provide dividends. Now, what's a dividend? Now, I want you to think about this. At the end of the year, at the end of every year, after the company has paid everybody, right? They paid their debts, they paid their employees, whatever. They have a bag of money left over. They should always have a bag of money left over if they're profitable, right? They have a bag of money left over. Now, what do they do with that bag of money? Well, there's two things they can do with it. They can keep it. It's called retained earnings. Or what they can do is they can give it away to their stockholders, to their owners, right? That's called dividend. Now, they're not restricted as to what they can do. So they can keep all of it and give the dividend, have a dividend of zero. They can give all of it away to their stockholders and keep none of it. Probably not going to happen. They can do it 50-50, 60-40, however, right? So it's up to the board of directors to decide how they're going to do this. But so you can get paid from stocks basically off dividends, and different companies offer different dividends. So there are ways that you can think about, geez, what do I want? Do I want a company that creates a large dividend, or do I want money that a company that doesn't create a large dividend, but what happens is that their value is increasing largely over time, right? And what happens is you only charge taxes on the increase, right, on the dividends and the increase of when you sell it. Okay. And typically that's done with a capital gains tax, which may or may not be lower based on your other income. Again, consult your tax professional to find out how you're going to fit. Now, those are individual stocks. I'm not a big lover of individual stocks. And the reason is because it's not very diversified. You're putting all your money into this one company or putting a lot of money into one company at a time, right? Now, mutual funds, right, is something kind of different. Mutual funds is a financial vehicle managed by investment companies. And what they do is they buy a whole bunch of stocks, right? Stocks from a lot of different other companies, which creates an automatic diversification. And then they allow you to buy into that mutual fund So typically, instead of you buying all those individual stocks, you're buying into the mutual fund, which is buying all of those individual stocks for you. So it enabling you as an individual investor to become very diversified. Okay, it works out well. Now, they're available in in a different kind of broad type of assets, such as small cap funds, which are typically smaller companies, large cap funds, which are basically bigger companies, right? Mid cap fund, growth funds, income funds, sector funds, international funds, and most of these do exactly what their name says. Now, again, the real beauty of the mutual funds is you don't have to buy a complete share. You're buying a group with a group of other investors. You're buying a whole bunch of stocks, and that creates um, a other kind of diversification because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Okay, and I really like this. I really like this, and I'm continually, even at this point, even though I'm retired, I am continually at this point putting money into, a a, a mutual fund. Now, what I end up doing is I'm putting most of mine into an indexed mutual fund, which is tied to the S&P, the Standard and Poor's 500. Okay. Now, basically, what this mutual fund does is it tries to mimic the S&P 500. Now, the cool thing about this is what happens is that this has been, goodness, it's returned over the last 10 years about 13%. Pretty sweet. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that it's always going to do this, but it gives you some diversity. So some of the stocks are going to go up, some of the stocks are going to go down, and you're going to have other people that do this for a living. They're professionals at doing this, and what they'll do is that they typically will be better at it than you will, right? Yeah. So you want to get a mutual fund that has a good track record, and a way to do that is you go to morningstar.com, right? Which is a great place to learn about individual mutual funds and their track record. You can go to a broker like a Northwestern Mutual or Charles Schwab and learn about their mutual funds. Okay, they're probably going to be more limited in their selection. But those are some ways to learn about these things before you start investing. I love stocks and bonds and mutual funds. I do all my investing in mutual funds because it's what I'm comfortable with. You may not have to. Okay. All right. Now, bonds. What's bonds? Bonds are fixed income securities that represent a loan, basically, right? So what you're doing is you're loaning, um, uh, money to a corporation, or loaning money to the government. Okay. Now, some of the key parts about that is a lot of those are government bonds. Of course, corporate bonds is municipal bonds. They're typically considered low risk. They're not going to typically produce large returns, but they do have their place. And the way that I use bonds is that it allows me to still make a return on my investment, but at a lower risk. So it allows me to lower the risk of my entire portfolio. Okay. Not necessarily a bad thing. And then, of course, real estate. Real estate is the darling of many, many people, right? You've heard of Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's big, big, big on real estate. There's lots of coaching programs out there about how you can make money on real estate, right? There's flipping, TV shows talk about flipping houses and things of this nature. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, promise. Um, so basically, what happens is that you buy real estate, right? And you're hoping that real estate goes up, and you turn around and you sell real estate. Now, a lot of people like this because they believe that real estate will always go up eventually, right? Key word there is eventually. They're not making any more of it, right? So, yes, over a period of time, a long period of time, real estate will always go up. Doesn't mean it will be in a good market when you decide to sell. Yeah. Now, the reason a lot of people like real estate because it's tangible. They can touch it, they can feel it. It's not like a stock that you just have a piece of paper, right? With real estate, maybe you buy a house, you can go in, you can see the house, you can touch it, you can feel it, you like that, right? So, there's many ways of making money in real estate. A lot of people like it for that reason, right? You can buy a home, you can fix it up, you can sell it for more than you sold it for. You can buy a home, you can rent it out to renters, right? Uh, Other people will buy a REIT, a real estate investment trust. It operates kind of like a mutual fund. So what you can do is you can go in with a bunch of other investors, in this mutual fund, and what'll happen is you may buy commercial or residential real estate, right? So there's lots of ways to invest in real estate. Now, let me give you a couple of different examples. So I got a good friend of mine, Keith, right? And he loves to invest in real estate and has done it for years. It's been a big part of his portfolio, not the only thing, but a big part of his portfolio. He actually likes real estate a lot more than stocks. I like stocks more than real estate, right? So, but basically what he does is that he goes in and he tends to buy a home, right? Buys a home and he moves in. Now, what he then does is he then fixes the home up. He buys it at a good price. He'll do a lot of the work himself. He'll repaint it. He'll you know put in new cabinets. He'll put in new I don't know, walk-in closets or whatever. He'll do some remodeling. He'll do some landscape work, and he'll do a lot of the work himself. And that's important because if he does the work himself, then it's much easier for him to turn a profit on that than if he has to pay market rates for doing that work. Okay. And then what he'll do is he'll live in that house for a year, 2 years, or whatever, right? And then he'll turn around and he'll sell that house in a high when the market is higher, right? And make money. And then he'll go and turn around and do it again. Okay. And he's done this for goodness, I don't know, 20 plus years. And he's been very successful at it. Okay. But he understands construction. He does a lot of the work himself. All right. I got another friend, John. John, what he does is he goes out and he buys houses, and he has bought. I don't know. I bet he's got over 10 houses right now. Right now, what he does is he then rents them out on 6 months or a year lease, and he thinks this is great because this provides him a monthly income. Right, and then if he decides to sell the house, he'll sell the house and hopefully make more money on the sell as well. Okay, great. Now, the problem or the issue with that is that what happens is that though they're not liquid, right? Neither one of those situations is very liquid. In other words, if you need money, you can't just turn around and sell it, right? Or you can't sell it easily. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 6, 8 months. If you have renters in there, that you have to get the renters out before you can sell the house. You've got contracts associated with them. Your renters may be trashing the house. There's a variety of things you're going to have to go in and fix things if that your renters break, right? So John thinks this is okay. Keith would never do that. Keith would never do that. So here's two examples, Keith and John, that are doing different things, both with residential houses, making money with residential houses, but two different ways. Okay, so it's different ways of making money with real estate, and it's good. It's not a guarantee, however, right? Because you may not, when you need to turn around and sell that house, it may not be in a quote unquote up market, right? So now what you're going to do. And the problem with real estate is that we're dealing with numbers, investments that have lots of zeros. Not like a stock that you're buying for $10, $20, $100, right? It's dealing with houses that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So when you're dealing with real estate, here's some questions that you might want to ask yourself. Very good questions. Question number one: will this real estate investment make me wealthy? Will it make me wealthy? Okay. Number two question: will this real estate investment keep me wealthy? Okay. That's a different question. And question number three: will this real estate investment make me poor? Oh, again, remember 2008. People lost a bunch of money in real estate investments. Um, they were doing it poorly, kind of what it amounts to. Okay. Now you need to ask these questions before every transaction, whether you're talking about real estate or you're talking about stocks and bonds or whatever, right? You need to ask. Those are good questions to ask on all of those. But it's really, really important on real estate because with real estate, you kind of tend to deal with a lot more money. Okay. So those are some things, different kind of investment types you might want to think about. These are some that I have used, and we'll go from there. Now, in the next video, what we'll talk about is we'll talk about what I personally did in the accumulation phase. We'll talk about that. Okay. All right. So thanks for checking in. Again, I'm Mike O'Neill, Money Coach LLC. See you at the next video.